First of all, good morning to everybody. Our Honorable Chancellor, Mr. Samir Somaiya, distinguished researchers and teachers who are addressing today's function, Professor Shashidhara, Professor Thorat, Professor Kothari, Dr. Agarwal, 2021 admitted research scholars of the Somaiya Vidyavihar University, my colleagues from the Somaiya Vidyavihar University and Somaiya Vidyavihar institutions, Secretary of the Trust, General Jagbir Singh, other invitees, dear students, let me welcome all of you to this very important function in the history of Somaiya Vidyavihar University and Somaiya Vidyavihar as a whole. Somaiya Vidyavihar institutions have been in existence for more than 7 decades now. Today is an important milestone in the development of, in the growth of Somaiya Vidyavihar institutions, as well as the newly formed Somaiya Vidyavihar University. Today we are inaugurating the session of the first batch of the full-time PhD program in Somaiya Vidyavihar University. When I say that inauguration of the first batch of the PhD program, it doesn't mean that our institutions were not involved in research or not involved in PhD research for the last several years. We have been involved in PhD research, postdoctoral research, taking up consultancy, all these activities through our institutions, higher education institutions, which were functioning under the Mumbai University, under the Kavikulaguru Kalidas University and SNDT University. Number of our teachers, more than 100 teachers are research guides of the various universities in the state of Maharashtra, and they have been guiding research students. They have successfully guided research students, and they have published papers, and research is an integral part of the higher education institutions under the Somaiya Vidyavihar and Somaiya Ayurvihar, including our medical colleges, medical college, dental college, and nursing college. Our teachers and our students are really interested in research. They are also taking up research as part of the undergraduate program. In our postgraduate courses, we have introduced research as an integral part, just as any central universities or national institutions in India. And today we are inaugurating the first batch of the PhD program of the university. We became a university in 2019, and for the last 1.5 years, we have been looking at the various quality parameters which are necessary for creating a research culture among our higher education institutions under the university. Creating a research culture in a university, that is, it's a very important process. Without the involvement of active doctoral or graduate students, we will not be able to create a research culture in any university. So, a combination of eminent research guides, eminent teachers, and the research scholars, the funding agencies, all these things contribute to the creation of a research culture in the university. When it comes to PhD program, it is not. I mean, we cannot just call it path-breaking research or anything. PhD is a training for research, and therefore it is very important that we should give the correct training for the doctoral students. And it is this training which they are getting that creates research. Probably that will last in them forever. And if you just see that eminent PhD students are the reasons for creation and existence and excellence of a number of research institutions in this country. If you just look at the success stories of creating research culture in our own universities and national institutions, we can see that the role of the research scholars is so eminent. If you just universally also, globally, you will see very prominent research scholars, PhD scholars, probably they have contributed even to the, not even, they have contributed to the several Nobel Prizes and all that. And even diploma arbeit or diploma research. Diploma arbeit is a German word. A diploma arbeit leading to a Nobel Prize. We have examples of Moss-Bohr effect and all that. So it is very important that we should create a PhD research culture in the university, and that is very important for a university also. I am not just mentioning about the statutory parameters required for accreditation and all that. Leave it like that. It is very important that we should have the best research scholars, motivated research scholars. They should do the quality research. They should understand the ethics and morality of research. They should understand the importance of quality publications. They should understand how they can present themselves in national and international scenario. They should also understand how to attract the research funds. So these are all part of creating a research culture. It cannot be got overnight. It has to be a very laborious exercise, some sort of a sustained effort by a combination of the activities of the research scholars, the research guides. The research guides play a very important role. Probably nobody else plays a more important role in the development of research culture in the university. It is the interaction. It is the very effective interaction between day-to-day interaction between the research guide and the research scholar that makes a research culture. There has to be continuous dialogues about the quality of research. There has to be discussion about national and international areas and interventions which are necessary for research. And there has to be continuous dialogue happening in the nook and corners of the campuses. That is how research culture is created. So they only can create a real research culture. So far, we have been doing this as part of the other universities, getting a PhD, and then of course for career advancement and all that. But apart from that, there are noble purposes for research, and I'm very confident that the freshly admitted students of the Somaiya Vidya Vihar University will understand the nuances of research by undergoing this 1 year methodology coursework programs from eminent teachers from our side and eminent researchers from India and abroad. And it is very important that we should have continuous interaction and dialogue with national institutions, national universities, international universities, industries, R&D development, and also the research and development institutions. I don't want to make a speech here. This is today is a very important day, as I mentioned. Is the result of almost 9 months. We have created the guidelines, we have created the regulations, we have followed the UGC regulations, we have looked at the quality parameters of research, we have looked at how academies are doing research. We had several rounds of discussion in our university involving heads of departments, deans, research guides, and all that, and all the concerned. Following all these procedures, we were ready to admit research scholars more than a month ago. But then when the deans and Dr. Kandandikar approached me for starting the coursework, I said, just starting the coursework is not enough. We have to ensure that we have to start with a quality practice. Even in starting this program, we have to start a quality practice. And therefore, we should get some of the top researchers addressing the research scholars today. And I am extremely glad that we have Professor Shashidhara, who is now Distinguished Professor and Dean of Research in Ashoka University, on lean from the Indian Institute of Science Education Research, a person internationally known for unifying biology, all its branches. I think let me welcome Professor Shashidhara for this meeting. And let also Professor Thorat from Institute of Chemical Technology. He was the director of the Bhubaneswar campus, an expert in chemical biology. Professor Kothari, a professor of education from North Gujarat University, and Dr. Agarwal, who is the president of the Indo-Gulf Marketing Association, who is a management expert. We have selected 4 experts, one from management, one from technology, one from science, and one from education. That doesn't mean that we do not have humanities. We have social science, we have humanities, social sciences, we have literature, language, cultural studies, all these area, health sciences, medical institutions, all these things, all these institutions are there. Today we have only these four experts. Probably in the days to come, in the weeks to come, we will have more interaction with eminent researchers of this kind. And let me welcome all of them for accepting our invitation to accept and to give a 1 hour, almost a 45 minutes lecture to the students. I also take this opportunity to appreciate and thank the support and encouragement given by Mr. Samir Somaya, the Honorable Chancellor of the University, for taking us uh, in various academic developments. I assure that with the help of quality earning teachers and researchers, we will be able to make a mark in fundamental and applied research in various branches across the country and abroad. I wish the research scholars all success. Definitely, I will be addressing almost every 15 days. I will be addressing the research scholars. Tomorrow, we will be chalking out a program how to do how to program 1 year of this research methodology workshop. With this very brief introduction, let me welcome all of you. Let me welcome our Honorable Chancellor, Mr. Samir Somaya, to formally open the PhD program of the Somaya Vidya Vihar University. Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Pillai. Thank you for this remarkable inauguration in the midst of very difficult times. I thank Professor Shashidhara, Professor Thorat, who is an old friend, and I see him here. Dr. Thorat, welcome. Professor Kothari and Dr. Agarwal. Thank you all for accepting our invitation to help inaugurate the PhD program of the Somaya Vidya Vihar University. Thank you, all of you, all our faculty, and most importantly, all the candidates who have made the admission into our program. It is a day, as Dr. Pillai said, 2019 is when the university was founded, and this is the admission into the PhD batch. It's also a day of history for our university. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. The motto of our Somaya Vidya Vihar is Jnana Deva tu Kaivalyam. Jnanat Eva tu Kaivalyam. Knowledge and liberation only through knowledge. And that is what we seek to. May I request people to mute wherever? Thank you. I think so. The aim of Somaya Vidya Vihar, the motto of Somaya Vidya Vihar is liberation only through knowledge. Liberation can be of many types. So liberation can be from poverty, it can be from narrow mindedness, it can be from poor health. And we seek to achieve that liberation through the pursuit of knowledge. As I was preparing for this discussion this morning, I was looking at what PhD means. I've heard the word PhD a lot of times. And of course, PhD is Doctor of Philosophy. But then what does philosophy mean? Philosophy comes from the Greek root philos, meaning love, and sophy, meaning wisdom. It is the love of wisdom. If you go further into the roots of the word sophos, it is actually a sage, a wise person, a virtuous person, a good person. So, a doctor of philosophy, if we stick to philosophy, it is a person with love of wisdom, who is a good person and a wise person, and also a virtuous person. And then, what does doctor mean? Doctor comes from the Latin word docere, to teach. And so, it is a teacher who teaches the love of wisdom. And so, this is the pursuit that all of you have decided to pursue here with us. I am delighted that this 9-month effort that Dr. Pillai spoke about has resulted in 6 of our institutions with the College of Engineering, the KJ Soma Institute of Management, the College of Education, the College of Dharma Studies, the SK Somaya College, the CIRAC, and we have 55 admittees today for pursuing this PhD program under the university. The fields are diverse. The fields are in machine learning, they are in artificial intelligence, they are in management, they are in pedagogy, they're in languages, they're in Indian culture and architecture, there's human resources, they're in environmental sciences, a wide range of fields. It's a pleasure to know that this is what we're trying to do. What are we? Today we are finding ourselves in the midst of a crazy pandemic. Um, as we pursue our various studies, do we look at history as a guide for the future? As we study a PhD, do we look at, for example, the Spanish flu? Does it have lessons for us for the future? Does that last year hold us in good stead? Does the research that we study, does it encompass science? Does it encompass management, public policy? Does it encompass all these changes? Does our study look at the bigger challenges, not simply the one which we find ourselves in the middle of today, but also do we look at challenges of equity, of poverty, of climate change, of nutrition, of making a better world? I do hope that under Dr. Pillai's leadership, our students, our faculty will guide these people to become exactly doctors of philosophy, teachers with the love of wisdom. Thank you all for joining us today. Welcome to Somaya Vidyavir University. Good luck.
Good afternoon to one and all, respected dignitaries, my dear colleagues, and my young friends. Today, on the occasion of inauguration of the PhD program of Somaya Vidyavir University, I am happy to introduce Professor Bhaskar Narayan Thorat sir as a speaker for the second session of our today's webinar. Professor Bhaskar Narayan Thorat sir started his career in 1989 as a scientist at National Chemical Laboratory, Pune. In 1995, he joined the Institute of Chemical Technology, earlier known as UDCT Mumbai, as a senior lecturer in chemical engineering. In 2006, he became the professor at the institute, and from 2015 to 2018, he served the institute as the head of the department in the Department of Chemical Engineering. Since 2018, Professor Thorat is leading the ICT Mumbai IOC Odisha campus at Bhubaneswar as a director and professor in Chemical Engineering department. Apart from imparting knowledge to the students, as an academician, Professor Thorat has a magnificent career as a researcher too. His areas of expertise are industrial crystallization, filtration, drying and granulation, environmental engineering. He has more than 185 publications in the international peer-reviewed journals and international conference to his credit. He has delivered more than 50 plenary keynotes, lectures, and international conferences in over 50 countries. He has authored 26 books and monographs. Dr. Thorat is having 9 national international patents and more than 250 industrial licensings. Professor Thorat has won many awards and honors for his contribution to the field of chemical technology. He has been honored as a FRSC, FICS, and FMASC. Currently, he is a member of expert of group of doctors and scientists to advise government on prevention, containment, and clinical management of COVID-19 in the Odisha state. Professor Thorat is having following awards to his credit: Lifetime Achievement Award for outstanding contribution to drying and dehydration by Taylor and Francis, USA in 2019. CSIR IICT Avan Padma Shri Dr. G.S. Sidhu Capcom Distinguished Speaker Award in 2017. Guntur Portal Startup Innovation Award for Microbutyl Innovation, Covestro, former Bayer Material Science, Germany in 2017. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Award for the innovative cassava dryer and solar contribution dryer in 2013, each of $1 lakh US. Dell Social Innovation Award USD 60,000 US dollar for developing solar conduction dryer in 2013. Like this, there are many more awards goes to his credit. Since 2006, Professor Thorat is the founder president of World Forum for Crystallization, Filtration and Drying. He has been advisory member on several world societies such as International Drying Symposium, Nordic Baltic Drying Conference, Asia Pacific Drying Conference, French Drying Society, and many more. Professor Thoras has also served the chemical and allied industries as well as the state and central government bodies in different capacities, sometimes as a member or as a consultant or as an expert or as an advisor, such as member State Environmental Appraisal Committee for Government of Maharashtra, member Consent Committee Maharashtra Pollution Control Board, and consultant to 250 industries. Founder and co-founder of 5 startup companies worth 10 crore to 150 crore. And like this, there are many more contributions. We at Somaiya Vidyavihar University are really fortunate to have such an eminent person to guide potential researchers. A very warm welcome to you, sir, for today's second session. Thank you very much.
Am I audible, Dr.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir,
Thank you. Thank you for such a elaborate introduction. I know, the whatever you have spoken about it, I'm going to share my history or success story with the young faculties also, and how to create the word from zero, and which I have learned it from some of my professors at ICT UDCT. But these are the things which comes to you automatically. You don't have to rush behind all these awards, and the awards remains on the papers. But what is important is that the impact that you can create by research, by conducting research, and by having that mindset, which will put you in a different league, which separates you from the rest. I'm going to share with you some of my experiences. I'm going to make this forum very interactive, and I'm going to keep the question and answer session at the end of my talk for 15 minutes, and for an hour I'm going to share my speech in four sessions. So let me begin with thanking all the dignitaries. I listened to Samir Bhai, my old good friend, Godavari Refineries. We had a wonderful camaraderie of last 20 years, if I had to say so. So the Chancellor of the Somaiya Vidyavihar University, Samir, the Vice Chancellor of the Somaiya Vidyavihar University, Professor Rajashekaran Pillai. I heard you in the morning, and then I went to do some other work. I also listened to Shashidhara's lecture, we just finished, a distinguished professor from Ashoka University, who is on leave from the ISER Pune. Professor Ramesh Chandra Kothari, former Vice Chancellor of South Gujarat University, Bir Narmad, South Gujarat University. Dr. Mohanlal Agarwal, the President of Indo-Gulf Marketing Association. We got linked recently, yesterday only. We said hi to each other. And I must also, I know some of your faculties, Seema Samrani, if she's there, I think I saw somewhere in the morning. So I know her, she's a very good biotechnology, microbiology professor. Her students are working with me, by the way, for the PhD. And thank you also to Siddhappa Busner, who was behind me, and making sure that everything is in order. Busner, I think I must appreciate your all efforts in
Thank you very much.
Taking me out of my shell, which is very essential. Yeah. So first and foremost, I must congratulate Samir Somaiya for taking this wonderful university in establishing the Somaiya Vidyavihar University. In fact, I would consider not establishing it, but transforming the temple into a monastery. Are you getting me? The temple into a monastery. The monastery is all about where the top class preaching goes on. And from that point of view, I must appreciate the efforts that Samir has taken in last couple of years. It got established in 2019, though the Somaiya Vidyavihar is as old as 70 years. The credit also goes to the Karamsi Bhai Somaiya, who established the Somaya Trust in 1953, and the late Sri Shantilal Somaya, and the legacy has been followed by Mr. Samir Somaya in the wonderful way. So the Somaya is not a new to me. In fact, ICT, UDCT has a long association with Somaya. Not only because of their, the agri-based industries, which are located in two of the locations which I have visited a few times. One is at Samirwadi and other is at Sakarwadi. And the sugar industries, the sugar-based chemicals, and then eventually transforming the entire agri-related activity into Godavari refineries, which I consider is a very visionary step of having the biorefinery at the earliest stage, because the future is going to be all about the biorefinery. Let me tell you, the future of India, the future of globe is not the petrochemical refineries, it's going to be the biorefineries. And I think from that point of view, hats off to the Samir, even thinking about of establishing or renaming his company from Somaya Organics to Godavari refineries, biorefineries. I'm going to divide my speech in 4 parts. The first is the university education and the initiative taken by Somaya, which is in sync with the global education policies, not only the national education policies 2020, but also it syncs with the global education policies. Number 2 is that I'm going to talk about the demographic dividend, the role of women and the men in the education and research. I'm giving a little bit more priority to the women and probably an equal priority to the men also. The third session which I'm going to talk about, I'm going to give some time to the area of research and opportunities on how to go about scouting the research area, right kind of research area for conducting, for doing research. The fourth one is my own story of my own experience of starting the research outreach activities and getting international exposure. That's going to be my own story I'm going to share with you, so that you will hear from the horse's mouth how to start from the ground zero, because Samir has a wonderful vision of converting Somaya Vidyavihar University into a world-class university. I'm sure this is the right step in doing that, because India needs many more such universities. And the last session is going to be on the question and answer. All right, so let me begin with my interaction with Somaya. When we were the student at ICT UDCT in Matunga, I heard about Somaya Vidyavihar the day I landed in Mumbai. Because one of my close friends, one of the friends who joined along with me in 1982, didn't get the hostel in ICT UDCT because we had a very limited hostel capacity. My friend's name is Ravi Chavan, and I think Somaya Institute was kind enough to give accommodation to about 3 or 4 students of ICT, and they used to travel from the Vidyavihar to UDCT, and I also used to travel to Vidyavihar, their hostel, during the weekend. So I have a very fond memory of Vidyavihar Somaya Engineering Institute. Let me congratulate Somaya, the visionaries, particularly the KJ Somaya, the Karamshi Bhai Somaya. What is it takes to establish 34 institutes? Somaya University will have 34 institutes of its own. Almost 40,000 students are studying in different branches. I think 30, how many programs, I'm not sure about it, but I'm given to understand that the number of programs are in excess of 150. And you have about 3,000 faculties. Many of you probably may not know that about 10 to 15 years before, I was the Vice Chancellor's nominee, and I have come to Vidyavihar to interview many of the faculties probably who have become the middle-aged faculty by now. I was involved in selection of more than 100 faculties of Somaya Vidyavihar. So in case they are doing well, you can give me a credit In case if they are doing okay, then I think it's the time for me to to be associated once again with them, and I can mentor. I'm going to give assurance that I'm there to mentor all the young peoples, young faculties in case they need it to take up their career further. All right. So the university education, its real domain and the impact on the society. I will start by saying that I was a singular luckily fellow, to have landed in an institute like ICT, formerly known as UDCT. We have observed our professors very closely. We have observed. We are scared of our professors also because they were gigantic professors. They are, encyclopedia. They knew everything. They were fantastic teachers, fantastic researchers, command over language and whatnot, and the outreach activities. I'm talking about Professor M.M. Sharma, Professor Manmohan Sharma, Padma Vibhushan, Professor M.M. Sharma. We in fact, we learn a lot of things by simply observing them. Eventually, we started working them. We could get close to them and even learn more. So we were fortunate to be in the company of these giants, including M.M. Sharma, Professor J.B. Joshi, Professor G.D. Yadav, Professor A.B. Pandit. All of them are basically Padma awardees. And my own mentor, who is in Canada, Arun Mujumdar, he is also alumnus of ICT. And we learn by observing them as much as I learn by my observing mother. Let me tell you a brief about my mother so that it will be very essential that the women listen to it very carefully. My mother was hardly 7th standard. She was married when she was in 7th standard. Probably I come from the village where at that time the marriages used to take place at the age of 15, 16. So my mother was 15 or 16-year-old, and then she was married as soon as she finished her 7th standard. And then I realized as I started growing old, my mother is a mathematician. Because she used to do mathematics very quickly. And then eventually I learned from her because she eventually became a banker. What kind of a banker in the villages? Because I stayed in the villages. The entire village she transformed into a microeconomic system. She was trying to help hundreds of families by innovations. She was the innovator, she was a social scientist, and she was also an agricultural scientist. Automatically, those are the qualities which I learn it, and I'm going to share with you how I became a scientist, or how I became the thinker the way my mother has taught me. Well, the ICT's culture, coming back to the ICT. The chemical engineering head of the department at that time, Professor M. Sharma, his story says that the entire year's budget, including undergraduate studies and the research, was 17,000 in late 60s, 1960s, when he joined as a professor. Now, what kind of research you are expected in this kind of money, even in 1960s? About 10,000? 10,000 rupees per year. What kind of research you expect? What kind of path-breaking research you will do it? But then he set an example that you don't need to have very high-class instrumentation. You don't need to have very high-class facilities. The mind is a fertile ground for ideation. And if you have ideas, you can carry out your research and propagate that ideas, convert that idea into a tangible output. Once you have a tangible output, then you can take that your innovations to the next level. And that is what the Professor Sharma, our teachers, has taught us. Frugal. They hardly had any money for the research. I think the same ethos we followed. I hardly had any money from the government research grants. All the money that I generated were from private agencies, from associated with companies. I learned from that. I said, I'm not going to take money from the government agencies. I'm going to generate my own money for the research. And I think that should be the way that you should try to empower yourself. And that story I'm going to share with you in the fourth part of my speech. We had last week, ICT, our institute organizes organizes speeches by various experts. We had a speaker, two speakers we had. One was we had a speaker in the name of Honorable Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, who spoke on Atmanirbhar Bharat and by the role of chemical engineers in the development of various technologies which are needed for India to foster India, to take India into the 21st century. That lecture was yesterday at about 11:30. Followed by that lecture, we had the member of parliament, sitting member of parliament, Rajya Sabha, another politician but of academic background, Professor Narendra Jadhav. He spoke upon the various facets of Ambedkar, Dr. Ambedkar, and who was basically the economist and educationist. So I'm going to share some of those thoughts given by both Minister Nitin Gadkari and Dr. Narendra Jadhav. And it's going to be very precise, up to the very precise to the pinpoint. Let me tell you the stark reality. I hope there are equally number of women on the, I can see many of them. You know, Bangladesh, our next door neighbor, Bangladesh has much more per capita income than India, particularly the women. A country's progress, either in education, research, and development, look at the Sweden's figure. Sweden, any Scandinavian country, you take it. The moment the woman comes into an education, it's going to be a different ball game. The moment woman gets socially empowered, economically empowered, the nation is on the different path. I'm starting this by giving this example because these are the facts and figures. You can check it on the internet. You can check it, simply Google, and you'll come to know about that. Bangladesh has 40% women in the economic activity. 40%, 40. India has about only 16%. Only 16%. The gender gap in the economic development cost India about 50 to 30% of the GDP of the nation. What it means is that we lose about 30% of GDP. We lose roughly $800 billion by not having 50% of our population into the economic workforce or education, or for that matter in service industries. I said, why I'm talking this? It has the genesis in the research culture, which I'm going to take you in the little. So I'm trying to build up the background and to narrate you how important is the role of women in the education and the research. Until 1950, we kept 50% of the population, that is the female, the women, out of education. We kept 96 to 97% of the population out of the education until 1940, 1950. Because my parents did not get education. My parents did not have education because they were not allowed to go to the school also. Many Indians were not allowed to go to the school. So in fact, India started getting educated in 1950 for that matter. Look at this, we started much late. And therefore, we have to pick up at faster rate in order to justify the demographic dividend that we have. We might boast ourselves that we have median age of 26, 27-year-old. However, the demographic dividend in terms of youth, in terms of empowerment through the education is very poor. And unless and until we take the national education policy seriously, India can never compete with its neighbor, China, or even for that matter, Bangladesh will far march ahead of us. So this is the warning that I'm giving to all the policymakers, that education, you cannot neglect it. Research, even it is further important, which I'm going to talk to you a little later. You know, there's a group of countries called OECD countries. OECD countries, that is the Organization of Economic and Cooperation and Development, OECD countries. Okay, You know, the recent study says that OECD countries can contribute $6 trillion. You know what is $6 trillion? Do you know what is $6 trillion? India's GDP is about $2.7 trillion. So double than India's GDP, or probably 250% than India's GDP, that is 6 trillion. OECD countries can contribute if they match Sweden in terms of gender parity in the work and education. Remember this, you know, this is very, very important. So this is the background which I'm trying to create so that, you know, I can take you to the next point of the role of education research in the building India, in the new India. All right. So in terms of contribution to the field of education, we are still short of, you know, considering that we have the real benefit advantage of demographic dividend. We have three major sectors where the contribution is required. Number one is the agriculture sector. I'm so happy that Somaiya Group started their journey from the agriculture activity, both Samirwadi and Sakarwadi. We have agriculture sector which contributes from about 8 to 15% GDP, overall GDP. I will take the conservative figure of about 15%. So 15% of the GDP, overall GDP comes from the agriculture sector. Manufacturing sector, somewhere around 22 to 25%. So 25% of the GDP comes from the manufacturing sector. China's GDP in the manufacturing sector is more than 50, more than 40. 60% India's GDP comes from the service sector. So all these three sectors which contribute to the overall wealth of the nation, 15% from agri, 25% from manufacturing, and 60% from the service sector. Now, what are these numbers? Can these numbers alter the entire demography of India in terms of the India being a powerhouse of activities? Let me tell you, I'll come back to that with much more explanation. 1% increase in agri GDP. For example, from 15%, if you go to 16%, we bring 1 crore population into we empower 1 crore population because of that. Let me tell you this story a little bit differently. All right. India, we add every year 1 crore population to the 1 crore youth to the employable age. Every year 1 crore people comes of employable age, 18 years, 20 years, 22 years. So how do you create an employment for these people? So you can only create the employment for these people by some mechanism in which they become self-employable, because government, no matter how much it is strong, how much it is powerful, can never create an employment for about 1 crore population. And therefore, from that point of view, it is the job of an education institutes, of the researchers, of the teachers, to have that in their mind, that you have also responsibility of generating minds, generating, you know, the creative minds who can then employ themselves, and in turn they employ the whole masses of people. So the education, India's education requires creating the mind, creating the people who are highly creative, who are really contributing to the demographic dividend in terms of socio-economic and political contribution. I'm not going to talk about any political contribution, but certainly socio-economic and technological contribution in lifting India from its the present conditions, so that we become a powerful nation. Let me go back again to the history and tell you what is India is all about. Why I'm trying to tell you all this, because This is required for me to enlighten you, to bring you out of that closet where we are basically stuck in the microcosm of self-constraint. And that is what basically I would like to take you out of that and put you on the path of a thinker so that you can also be an industrialist. By the way, I must tell you that not only I am an academician, teacher, researcher, but I am also an industrialist like Samir Somaiya. I also have about 4 industries, all of them run by my PhD students. And like what Bushner says, that my companies have turnover from about 10 crore to over 200 crores. This wealth, you can create it. But we must know our roots. We must know our capabilities. More than capabilities, we must know our incapabilities also. So let us see what are those incapabilities. What mindset we are stuck into that. Number 1, India is one country, 31 states, 1,600 languages, 6,400 castes, subcastes are much more, 6 religion, 6 ethnic groups, 29 major states, and 1 nation. Now, is it a diversity that we should be proud about? It is not the diversity that we should be proud of, but because we are locked in the microcosm of self-constraint and self-contented life. We are self-contented. We do not want to come out of the closet, either in terms of education or taking the risk. I'll come back to that, because a teacher is supposed to take the risk. What kind of risk teacher is supposed to take? The researcher risk is something different. It's a calculated risk, which I'll tell you by on my example. India must open to its own people. Forget about India incorporating the other peoples into its fold. We have to open up to each other. We have to collaborate with each other. We have to network with each other. We have to have the inclusive policy of each other. We have to have the women population in the workforce to about 50%, as their population is about 50% of the nation. All right. So let me take you to the next stage. Now if you look at why I'm giving you this background, because we have never thought about something which looks so obvious to us. What is that? You know, the Chinese, their primary, secondary, tertiary education is all in Chinese language. Look at Germans. Their primary, secondary, and tertiary education is all in Germany. So it belongs to France. So is Portuguese. 50% of time I spend in Scandinavia, in the Sweden and the Finland, country which has about 50 lakh population, more than about 1/3 of Mumbai itself. The Swedish has primary, secondary, tertiary education in the Swedish language, so as the Finnish language, so as the Danish language, and so on and so forth. Our next door neighbor, a little bit further, Thailand, has its own language, primary, secondary, and tertiary in Thai. So their thesis is submitted in the Thai language. Look, what are the impediments we have? Many of us learn our primary education in our vernacular language. Some people do the rote learning because they go to convent, their parents don't speak English at home. So, it's some kind of a half-baked, half-baked knowledge, they get it. Now, there is some kind of a flaw in the system. However, there's no need to worry about that. We can overcome that. There are certain flaws in the system, in the mindset. I'm talking about the mothers and the parents who would like to make those kids thinking kids so that they get the right kind of education, right? So all these countries, you take Spanish, you take Italian, you take Dutch. Now, everybody has their primary, secondary, and tertiary education in English. We get beating there. We do our primary education, secondary education, primary in the vernacular language, secondary education we get transformed into semi-English medium or English medium, and then we do our research and everything in the English medium. Okay, there are some kind of difficulties in that. However, the time has come that we have to master over the language. And there is what basically I admire the way Somaiya is all about. Professor Pillai, you have a certain advantage, is that you have all these 34 institutes and more than 160 professional courses. You have linguistic, you have humanities, you have engineering, you have biological sciences, biomedical sciences, biotechnology, liberal arts, humanities, religion, theology, medicine management, mass communications, and whatnot. You have something in courses in Sanskrit, in Pali, and whatnot, all those things. So you are at the threshold of a revolution. You can create a revolution because you have all the ingredients which is required to transform India into the real India. What is that real India? The real India is very simple. If you look at the history, the India's contribution to the GDP of the world was 30%. Can you imagine at one time India's contribution to the GDP was 30%. Today, America's contribution to the world GDP is 20%. So by that comparison, we were superpower at that time, just before Maurya dynasty's period. That's about 2000 years back. Today, we are 15-16% of the world's population. But what is our contribution to the global GDP? Our contribution to the global GDP is about 2.5 to 3%. So what has happened in between the Maurya dynasty and today? I think Samir is very proud that you have a school of Buddhism, Jainism, and you have school of spiritualism, which can also give an answer to the way of life by which we can empower the people to come out of the closets and be a thought makers or thought processors. So that is something which is I must tell you that how to bring about the revolution. All big ideas takes place in the universities. Let me tell you, university is the harbinger of the ideas, and those seeds or ideas must take a big form so that it can be a very high impact on the society. That is something which I wanted to tell you. Now let me take you to how do you pick up the problem for the research for the teachers. The bottom line is like this. If the teacher and the students use the same book in the university education, is the end of the education. That's number one rule. Rule number one is if the teachers and the students use the same book, the students use the same book for the examination with teachers for completing syllabus, that's the end of the education, number one. Number two is that the teacher, unless and until there is like what I said is the university is a harbinger of ideas. Unless and until you give the freedom to the teacher to do research and come out of the ideas, university will never progress. All the universities in the West, they have grown up because the university has a research culture. And now you will ask me, how do I bring out the research culture in Somaiya University? It's pretty very simple. It's as simple as how ICT started research in 1933. The same culture I am trying to explore in Bhubaneswar, because we will graduate our first PhD student before we graduate our undergraduate students. Can you believe that? ICT IOC in Bhubaneswar will have first PhD students graduating before even undergraduate comes out of the district. So that is the way how you can empower your teachers to carry out the research. Number one, what kind of problem shall I pick up for research? Well, this is something which is not easy, but at the same time, it is also not difficult. And I'm going to have a session of question answer that you can ask a question, what area I should start a problem, I can be a global leader in that problem. Number one, if you want to pick up a problem in the area of your expertise, pick up a small problem and try to find out what you can work on that problem. You must get through the literature, number one. You must read the journal papers. You must read some of the published articles, and then come out with and define the problem very well. Once you define the problem very well, then start talking to the people who are associated with that idea. Normally what I do is that if I want to do some business, I have a lot of startups, there are about 20, 30 startups are there. My students are there. There are a lot of venture capitalists putting their money. So we pick up a problem and we involve the people who are affected by that as the stakeholders. Remember, as a teacher, researcher, you can also be a business minded. How does that, there's a difference between being a techno entrepreneur and the business people. So you can be a techno entrepreneur, and teacher needs to be the top of the list of the techno entrepreneur. So you define a problem, you involve the people who are affected by that problem, and you ask them what kind of solution you are looking for. What kind of solution you're looking for? Now the lady came to me, sir, the onion which I buy sometime is 5 rupees a kg when it's a bumper crop, and then sometime it's become 80 or 90 rupees a kg. So I cannot run my house if I have to buy onion 90 rupees a kg. Okay, fine. Then I went to the farmer. I asked him, what is the rate and what are the issues with you when you get a bumper crop? At Nasik I visited, and I have literally seen the people dumping the tomatoes, the lorry full of tomatoes, which was supposed to come to Mumbai and sell it in the market. That day tomato was being sold at 1 rupee a kg. And the lorry which comes from Nasik to Mumbai, the freight itself is more than the cost of tomatoes. So what will farmer get? So we started working on this problem. I said, can I do something if I can, when the bumper crop comes, when the tomatoes comes in the huge quantities, when the onion comes in the huge quantity, if I process on the farm and then sell the product in the market, and I make assurance to the farmer that is it okay, irrespective of the onion that you manufacture or that you produce in the farm, irrespective of the tonnage that you get it, sometimes 30 tons, sometimes 50 tons, sometimes 150 tons. I will assure you that I will give you 10 rupees per kg of onion. Is that okay with you? He said, okay, if I get 10 rupees per kg assured price for my onion, I'll be very happy. That was the starting of the ideas. We said, let us go and build some unit where I can make some value addition to these tomatoes and the onion. So we designed an equipment which processes the tomatoes and the onions at the farm level in the absence of electricity. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Because the electricity, regular electricity, is not going to be there in the villages. They have 8 hours cut, 10 hours cut, and so on and so forth. So we developed a solar dryer, solar dehydrator, which runs on no electricity. And that innovation gave us the first Bill and Melinda International Innovation Prize of $1 lakh US. So 65 lakh rupees we got. We invested that. I could have taken that entire 65 lakh rupees with me. I said, I'm not going to take it. I'm going to invest back into the farm. I developed few more equipments, let's say about 50, 60. And then I started, processing more and more. When the Gates Foundation saw that these people have invested their award money and they started selling the products, because by the time we had launched the company, Science for Society Technological Services, Techno Services Private Limited. Our products were selling in various countries. We started getting money back. The Gates Foundation gave us about 10 times more money, just about $1 million. So that means about 7 crores. We invested again into that. We expanded. And then after that, we simply expanded and expanded. So now we have the investors from the Shell Global. Now we have the investors from the top of the companies, including some of the giants companies like Tata and other things. So how did it happen? The idea started in the university. The idea started in my lab. So what is that pain that you can convert into a gain? Looks like a business philosophy, but it's the real fact that you need to convert the pain of the people into the gain of the people. And by doing that, you can create a value chain across the society. When that value chain you create it, then you basically are termed as a change maker. And that is what basically the university professors has the capability of being termed as a change maker, revolutionary or evolutionary. I can also give so many anecdotes to that because I deal with a lot of politicians also. Some of them grounded because they want to have some kind of a schemes. So they talk to me, sir, what can we do? And I keep on telling them, we have a dialogue with them. I'm not a politician, but I can talk to them very freely. I said, look, Mr. XYZ, you can bring about certain revolution in political democracy by political means. That revolution is going to be a temporary revolution. If you look at the history of the world and history of India, you will find that the revolution is most impactful revolution is through the social revolution and socio-economic revolution. The first impact is the social revolution. Second impact is the socio-economic revolution. Look at the American, look at the British, the first, the industrial revolution. The second industrial revolution, we were lagging in the industrial revolution because we were under the British Raj. Are you getting me? So we have to understand that the social revolution, the change in our thought process, the change in the looking at those ideas, ideation, which can bring about the metamorphic change in the society, that can bring about a big change in the mindset of the people and the society also. So just an example I gave you, and then we moved on to the next innovation, and the next innovation. So the today's innovation which we are trying to work with some of your mechanical engineering faculty, I have discussed with them some time back that India has about 8,000 of coastal area. I stay in the Bhubaneswar, and Bhubaneswar is more humid than Mumbai, more hotter than Mumbai. Odisha is one of the most backward states of India. I can't believe it that it is one of the most backward states of India, which was the last empire to be defeated in the lands of India. The Maurya Empire was last defeated. It was the last state which was captured even by the Mughals and the Britishers. Why the state of Odisha has gone to such an extent that the most backward state in India, because the government has come with the most aspirant districts of the country. India has about 137 districts. 137 districts which are categorized as aspiring districts. You know what is meant by aspiring districts? These are the districts in which socio-economic changes are not at all reaching to the masses. Most backward states, the KBK region, Kalahandi, Koraput, Balangir, Raigada, all these states are the poorest states, and the people are the mess of the condition. Absolutely, they are the poorest of the poorest, you can call it. So these aspiring districts, so we pitched into the government. I said, out of 137 districts, give us 2. So we got the two states. So we are now working on empowering the people of the two states. One is Dhenkanal and other is the Koraput. We started working on that. We started empowering the women. And today, with the help of United Nations Development Program and various other agencies, we have generated enough employment for about 20,000 women, each woman getting about 4,000 to 5,000 rupees per month and assured income through the technologies that we have developed. Now, this is the case study which I wanted to tell you from my own example. This 8,000 coastal line, now what we are trying to do is that we have gone ahead. We are going to build the eco houses, the smart village hubs. Now these houses will have solar panel on the top of it. And the temperature in the house will be less than 10 degrees, which is outside. The humidity will be less than 20 degrees, which is outside. Much more comfort. And when you have a comfort, because your efficiency goes up when you give a lecture in the AC room. Right now, I have a comfort of using my AC room, so I can give lecture more leisurely. My output can be much more better. So when you try to find out what causes the people laziness, why people are not hungry about the success, look at those problems, take up those problems, try to work out those problems, and you have a solution. So when you define the problem very well, what are the next steps that you should do as a teacher, as a researcher? Next step is involve the stakeholders in your group, number 2. Number 3 is network with the right-minded people through conferences and workshops. First, Indian conferences, local conferences, then you can fly abroad for international conferences, talk to the people, talk to the like-minded people, see what they are doing it. Publishing is one of the most important aspect of universities. You must publish also at the same time. You must also get the research published by your students. Teach them how to write good English. Teach them that you should write nice paper irrespective of the quality, irrespective of the impact factor of the journal. You should be very scary. You should be always away from those journals who are basically dummy journals. There are about 1,500 journals which basically, they are the research if you publish in those journals has no value, but they are basically a black journals. Just like black money, there are also black journals also. So all these things will eventually fall back if the teacher is creative in his approach. And I can share with you a number of examples. How you can be creative and impactful. Your research can be impactful, your teaching can be impactful, and your students will be super impactful. They will contribute back to the ethos and the institute. So I'm that way lucky because all this experience I got it by observing my teachers at my institute, ICT, and I'm sure there are a few more institutes like this. And I wish the Somaiya, which is going to be the university, which became university in 2019, will also rise to the expectation of the people. Let me tell you, no subject is more important, less important, more important. I'm a chemical engineer, but I also do a lot of research in sociology and economics. Socio-economic impact of technologies. You must have also the knowledge of other subjects. And if I had to summarize in one sentence, if you want to become a successful engineer, because I am an engineer, if you want to become a successful biotechnologist, because I am a biotechnologist, I hope Samrani is listening to me, Seema Samrani.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Absolutely correct. So if I want to become the top of the word scientist, top of the word engineer, you cannot become unless and until you have the knowledge of economics and you have the knowledge of the worldly behavior, your knowledge of sociology, your knowledge of law. You must continuously update yourself in these subjects also. And that's the reason why I said when you're teaching a subject, engineering and medicine also, you must teach student the other subjects which are equally important. I would normally vouch for about 15% contribution coming from the humanities to all engineering students. But that creates the mind. Your both sides of the brain starts working. We have a right side brain which is maths oriented. We have a left side brain which is basically arts oriented. Empathy is the name of the game. If you empathize with the people, if you empathize with the problem, you have the solution. If you start crying, "Arey Baba, mujhe problem hai, main kaise solve karu?" that problem will never going to be solved. You have to have a positive mind towards it. And there is no problem which can be unsolved. Every problem can be solved, provided you need to be a problem solver. By the way, you need team also. You must be also, even the teachers need a team, researchers need a team. I have a team of 50 students working with me. So you must have a team in order to make a big impact. So this is my personal example, personal journey, which I wanted to share with you so that you get inspired to do some research. And you can do research in medical field, you can do research in biotechnology, you can do research in vaccines, you can do research in automobile parts, you can do research in mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, pharmaceutical engineering, and whatnot. It's a limitless world. Absolutely limitless world. So thanks for your kind attention. And I wish you all the best. Wish Somaiya University, Vidyavihar University, all the best for their journey in the future. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you very much, Professor Tarat, for a very illuminating and motivating lecture to the research scholars, as well as the research guides, the teachers, the engineers, and also the social scientists. You rightly mentioned about how a teacher can be a techno-entrepreneur, and how that techno-entrepreneurship can help the nation. You also mentioned about the importance of empowering the 50% of women for enhancing the economic power of a nation, citing the Bangladesh as an example. Of course, you also quoted Professor Narendra Jadhav, whom I know, when he was a member of the Planning Commission of India, former Vice Chancellor of Pune University. You mean the same person, no?
Yes. In fact, when he was the member Planning Commission, I was a part of one of the working group of member Planning Commission.
Yes. You mentioned about that the importance of sociology, social sciences in converting knowledge, understanding the context of knowledge, how knowledge can be beneficial to the society. Unless and until you can have knowledge and skills, but you should also understand the context of the society. You mentioned about the diversity of the country, the vast diversity of the country. If you don't, I am sitting in Kerala. Actually, the context of knowledge and skills in a village in Kerala could be totally different from where you are sitting, maybe in a remote village in Uttar Pradesh or UP. You mentioned about that context also. So you have also narrated how an institution like originally UDCT, a department,
yes,
university department, started in 1933, if I am right, because I have visited, I am also a chemist basically, I have visited several times. It was started in 1933. How that institution has grown to just a university department under Bombay University. It has grown to a very prominent institution, university level institution, much earlier than 2000. I think UDCT got the university status. I remember I was also in the UGC. 2006, you got the deemed university status. It was a pride for the University Grants Commission to confer the university status to a UDCT. Now it is a national institution of importance. So why I highlighted these points, it is very important that our teachers, our departments, they should know how to grow, understanding the context. And you also mentioned it is not just because of the government funding or these things. It is promoting the independent initiative of teachers, independent initiative of researchers, and working them together, understanding the context. And this is a real lesson for an institution of this kind. Of course, we are in industry. Of course, our management is in industry. We are in other areas also. But it is very important for the young researchers in engineering, young researchers in technology and teachers in technology to understand how we can grow understanding the context of the situation. You also mentioned about the importance of learning and teaching and researching in the areas of social sciences and humanities. That is very important. It is a very, thank you very much. As the Vice Chancellor of the University, I take this opportunity to thank you very much for your illuminating lecture. Thank you very much.